Okay, so let's set the scene. It's 331 BC. One of the greatest military minds in history, Alexander the Great, is marching his army deep into the Persian Empire. And waiting for him? King Darius III, who has gathered a truly colossal force for one final winner-take-all showdown. This isn't just any battle. This is the story of Gaugamela. So on one side, you have Alexander's army. We're talking about 47,000 men. Now, that might not sound like a huge number, but this was a veteran force, battle-hardened, incredibly disciplined, and led by a guy who had literally never lost. They were a finely tuned killing machine. And this is what they were marching towards. Darius had scraped together an army from every corner of his massive empire. Some estimates say he had nearly as many cavalry as Alexander had total soldiers. The odds were just insane. Honestly, this should have been the end of the line for Alexander. So, to really get how this legendary battle went down, here's how we're going to break it apart. We'll start with the march to war, dive into the mind games between the commanders, look at the critical night before, then the wild tactics of the battle itself, and finally, the dramatic aftermath. All right, let's kick things off in the spring of 331 BC. Alexander's army is on the move, leaving Egypt behind and heading straight for the Persian heartland. The stage is being set for something epic. And this advance was just relentless. Check out the Euphrates crossing. His engineers had already built pontoon bridges for them. That's some serious planning. By mid-September, they're crossing the Tigris River, and nobody's there to stop them. Why? Because Darius wasn't trying to stop them there. He was luring them into a very, very specific trap. But this was way more than just armies marching around. This was a high-stakes chess match between two very different commanders, playing out across a continent. Darius, he had a pretty clever plan based on what had worked in the past. He figured Alexander would take the obvious route south along the Euphrates. So he prepared the perfect battlefield and planned to burn all the supplies along the way. But Alexander, he was anything but predictable. He knew his history too. He completely refused the bait, marching northeast instead, which totally wrecked Darius's plan and found a much cooler route for his army. So, forced to improvise, Darius scrambles to find a new spot, near a little village called Gaugamela. And this part is absolutely key. He had his men work like crazy to level the ground. They were literally clearing rocks, flattening bumps, creating a perfect, custom-made killing field for his huge cavalry force and his brand new toy, the scythe chariot. Okay, the battlefield is ready. Now we jump to the night before the fight. And this is where the psychological game becomes every bit as important as the physical one. Imagine you're Alexander's second-in-command, Parmenion. You're staring across the plain at a sea of Persian campfires, and you know you're outnumbered at least 3-1. So you make a pretty logical suggestion. Let's attack now, under the cover of darkness. Use surprise to even the odds. It's a tempting idea, right? And this is Alexander's famous reply. Now, it sounds like pure bravado, like something out of a movie, but this wasn't about honor. It was a stone-cold tactical decision. A chaotic night battle would make communication impossible, and it would completely neutralize his army's biggest advantages, its discipline and its ability to hold formation. And the result of that decision? It was a psychological masterstroke. While Alexander's men got a good night's sleep, Darius was so paranoid about that very night attack that he kept his entire army awake in full battle armor all night long. So by dawn, the Macedonians were fresh. The Persians, they were already exhausted and demoralized. Alexander had basically won the first round before a single spear was thrown. Morning comes. Alexander famously sleeps in. He's that confident. When he finally gets up, he leads his men out onto the plain to unleash one of the most brilliant and audacious battle plans in all of history. So, just a quick reminder of the forces at play here. The numbers are just lopsided, especially the cavalry. And Darius has his elephants and, of course, those 200 scythe chariots. To win this, Alexander couldn't just fight harder. He had to fight a whole lot smarter. So what was this incredible plan? Well, it was a 4-step gambit. First, Alexander doesn't just charge forward. He marches his entire army diagonally to the right. This weird move makes the Persians panic, thinking he's about to leave the nice flat ground they prepared. So their left flank stretches out to stop him. As they stretch, they pull men from the center of their line, and that creates the gap, the one tiny weak spot Alexander was waiting for. And that's step 4. He pivots his elite cavalry and charges like a thunderbolt straight for that gap, aiming directly at Darius. He was using the Persians' massive size against them. But hold on, what about those terrifying scythed chariots? The ones with blades sticking out of the wheels? They were specifically designed to plow into the Macedonian phalanx and just tear it to shreds. This should have been a game changer. The answer was just pure, unbelievable discipline. As these terrifying chariots came thundering towards them, the infantry simply opened up channels in their formation. The chariots just raced harmlessly through the gaps into a trap where they were easily picked off from the sides. Just like that, Darius's superweapon was totally useless. At that exact moment, Alexander's main charge hits home. He and his elite cavalry smash into that weakened line right in front of Darius. The fighting is intense, it's brutal. But when Darius sees Alexander himself carving a path straight towards him, he panics. For the second time in his life, he turns his chariot around and flees. And when an army sees its king running for his life, it's over. Morale shatters. The whole line just collapses. The Persian line is broken. Alexander can see Darius escaping, and with him, the crown of the Persian Empire. The ultimate prize is right there for the taking. But victory came with one last, agonizing test. So as he's chasing down the fleeing king, an urgent message gets to him from his general, Parmenion. The Macedonian left flank, which was desperately outnumbered, is on the verge of being completely wiped out. So what do? Chase Darius, capture him, and end the entire war in one glorious moment? Or do you turn back and save your guys? He turns back. Gritting his teeth, he gives up the chase for the ultimate prize and wheels his exhausted cavalry around to rescue his loyal general and the collapsing left wing. And that loyalty, it came at a hell of a price. The fight to save Parmenion's flank was some of the most brutal of the day. 60 of his elite companions, these were his closest friends and comrades, were killed in that single action. It was a victory, for sure, but a very costly one. So you see, Gaugamela wasn't just a contest of strength. It was living proof that a brilliant strategy can absolutely shatter superior numbers. It showed that a battle can be half won with psychology the night before, that discipline itself is a weapon, and that true leadership is what you do when you're forced to choose between personal glory and your people. In the end, Alexander was the master of the field. Darius's second great army was utterly destroyed. But as the dust settled over the plains of Gaugamela, one huge question still hung in the air. With the King of Kings still alive, still out there somewhere in his vast empire, yeah, the battle was won. But was the war really over?